My name is Sophie Collins. I am a life coach. I did my training about a decade ago and came out of a totally different career. I was working in brand strategy and had quite a sort of fast-paced agency lifestyle that wasn't really making me happy, but it was getting pregnant with my first child. I've got 3 young children. That kind of was the push to get into pastoral work and kind of taking more seriously some of the work I was doing in the office, which was kind of helping develop people and teams and so on. So I trained as a life coach. I love coaching, but I do all sorts of things alongside my private practice. I run a life coaching service at a really nice charity called Wilfred's House. I can tell you more about that at the end if we've got time. I teach emotional EQ education and relationships education to sixth formers. So I do a lot of workshops, kind of in-person workshops with sixth form and young adults preparing to go out into the world. And I also run a psychological well-being concierge with my great friend and business partner who's a psychotherapist, and we help individuals and families to get really good support from really good independent professionals when stuff is happening in life. So I'm telling you this just to build a bit of a picture of my life experience. I certainly don't have my life together. I regularly think of all the things I'd like to achieve and haven't, and think about what everyone else is doing. We all do it. That is just a condition of being human, I think. So what I'd like to do today, we've got an hour and we'll see how we get on. What I'd like to do today is just talk a little bit at a very sort of high level kind of way, just talking about some simple strategies for a meaningful life. So today we're kind of looking at success, how to get a little bit closer to understanding what success might look like for us in our life, and kind of thinking about how we can take some steps towards that. So that's my objective for today. So just to tell you in a little bit more detail, we're going to have a look at the meaning of success. I think it's very important that we explore that. It's a very ambiguous word and it's a very interesting subject. We'll just be touching on it today, but that's what we'll start off doing. We're going to have a look at and possibly reevaluate some of our personal values, and I will explain how we're going to do that and why. We're going to learn some tricks for making decisions. So making good decisions, good long-term authentic decisions is really challenging, can be really challenging. And I think it's just important to kind of revisit how we do that and if we can make any improvements to the way we make those. Sometimes it makes taking steps forward a bit less overwhelming. Finally, I'm just going to teach you a couple of tricks for setting really clear and achievable goals. Ultimately, life coaching is about that. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that today. So first thing I'd like you to do is this. So just close your eyes. You might still be eating your sausage rolls, Charlotte, but I'd just like anybody who's listening to this and this recording to just close your eyes and just take some deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. It's a hot day. We're all in the middle of our working day, so it's just doesn't need to be perfect, but just clearing our minds a little bit. When you're feeling like your body is settled and calm, and your hands are on your lap, keep your eyes closed. And what I'd like you to do is to picture a moment that made you feel energized, made you feel capable, and made you feel whole. It could be at any point in your life. It could be something you did at school. It could be a single moment, or it could be a period in time. Or perhaps you just like to think of the most recent thing that's happened to you or that you've achieved that really made you feel alive. You don't need to think too hard. Just see where your mind settles. You can do this exercise at another time as well. So with your eyes still closed, I'd like you to really think about where you are, who's around you. Maybe you're by yourself, maybe you're in a team with family. What can you smell and feel on your skin? Try and really take yourself back to that moment. And I'd like you to think about what it is about that moment in time that contributes to this feeling of energy and of aliveness. What is it that you've been capable at? What strengths do you understand about yourself in this moment? What does this moment teach you about what your version of meaningful and successful looks like? Right, so open your eyes, take a deep breath, and get back in the moment. So, Charlotte, I'm totally fine if you are kind of back to your lunch or don't want to unmute yourself, but I'd be really interested if you'd like to contribute a little bit, and again, just be open and share your views on this. And the first thing I'd like us to do is just have a think about how you define success. So to anybody listening here, just thinking about historically what that's meant for you. What are the influences in your life growing up and now? That might be family, could be friends. I think it's important to think about societal influences. You know, what does our culture, what does our community demand that we produce in order to be deemed successful? And how do you, as a consequence, define success? What things are important to have in place in order to be successful? And Charlotte, if you're still there, I'll just give you a moment to unmute yourself. And if you
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Charlotte.
Hello.
So I wonder if you've got anything to share around this. I'm always really interested to hear what kind of comes to your mind. And please don't, you don't need to say anything super profound or intelligent. It's really is just what pops into your mind instinctively is actually the most interesting thing.
I think for me, I would say sort of to define success would be happiness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like for me, it's not about having loads of money or anything like that. It's just sort of being comfortable, enjoying what you're doing, and just genuinely being happy in all aspects of your life.
Great. I love hearing that. And tell me something about how you were raised, what your family valued, or the people around you who you cared about and admired and were influenced by growing up. And tell me something about how they informed that, or if they informed that.
So we were a very, very close family. Um, and it was, I suppose that's where it sort of come from in the sense of just making sure, whatever you do in life, as long as you enjoy it, that's sort of the main thing, really.
Great, that's really lovely. So you felt supported growing up just to make your own choices and enjoy what you were doing.
Definitely. Yeah,
Great,
100%.
great. And is that what you saw in the people, whether it was your parents or carers or grandparents or aunts and uncles, whoever was around you? Is that what you saw them doing?
Definitely. Yeah.
Great, lovely. So you were surrounded growing up by this strong sense of finding joy in life and kind of measuring how things are going by that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I love that. And tell me something about your perception of society's view of success, both when you were growing up and if relevant now, if you think it's changed at all.
That's a tough question. I suppose everyone has their own version of it, don't they? Their own version of what they
Yeah,
mean by success. Some people might be more money orientated, in the sense that can define success. Others, as long as everyone's happy and healthy. That's a tough one.
I think you've kind of summed it up. I think what we're establishing here is just that success looks so different. In reality, it looks different to everybody. I think there are some kind of stereotypical versions of that definition, and perhaps when we were growing up, and it for some people was a bit more of a patriarchy, and maybe success looked a little bit more like kind of wealth and money, and maybe more around career. And I think that for some people, some younger people, I'm a millennial, I'm 40. I think for some people who are very immersed and who've grown up with social media, there can be a very strong sense of perception, how one is perceived, everything being kind of glossy and looking good, and this constant thing of kind of reinforcing to yourself and to everybody else how well things are going, and that feels important in terms of a successful life and a successful person. And so I think there are lots of really interesting measures of success today. Certainly, and actually I want to show Show you next just a nice little visual that I've got, because quite a lot of people that I speak to, I think, that get very caught up in feeling like unless they have a job title that they are proud of and kind of that gives them enough status, something that they're proud to talk to other people about, and unless they're earning a good salary, that they're somehow failing and not really being successful in life. So I just want to establish nice and early that we're looking at success in a much more holistic way. Just as you say, Charlotte, this is the second bit of the visual, which is, a better measure of success is far more nuanced and colourful, literally colourful in this instance. But we've got so much going on in our lives. Humans are complex, and life is complex. And really, I'd like us to look at success in that more nuanced way. So here we've got things like, what do our relationships look like? Are we carving out enough free time for ourselves? And what do we do with that free time? Are we making space for joy in our life? And then maybe instead of thinking about salary, I've got to be earning loads, maybe it's more around financial health. Am I living within my means? For everybody, financial health kind of looks different. It doesn't need to be about earning buckets of cash. For some people, maybe it is. Maybe that really matters. It kind of depends a little bit about what your ultimate goals are. But I think, thinking about fulfilment, perhaps making a difference, giving back to the world. So there are all sorts of ways that we can look at success. And as you say, Charlotte, it's going to be really different for everybody. So we're just going to have a little look today about how we can think about our version of success so that carries us forward. If anyone's around for my next workshop, which is in July, one of the things we will do is we're looking at balance and kind of carving out calm in our life. And one of the things we'll do is look at the wheel of life, which looks a little bit like this and kind of helps us to establish our version of what we need in order to feel balanced and feel like our life is going the way we want it to be going. So another visualization. I don't actually normally do this kind of work very often with clients, but I think in this case it's really helpful. So if you just close your eyes again, take deep breaths in through your nose, release that breath through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And I just want you to visualize yourself at 80, you're 80 years old, and you're sitting somewhere peaceful and calm and energizing for you. And you're looking back with a real sense of contentment and pride over the life that you've lived. And I don't want you to think too hard about this. I just want you to think about and be aware of what you see. What do you see in a life that has felt like your version of a success, has felt fulfilled and full of joy and satisfaction? Tell me, what are the places you've been, the environments you've lived in, maybe the places you've travelled? Who have you spent your time with? And what have you done with that time? What are the activities you've done? What have you achieved in your life? Whether those things are for yourself, to do with learning, to do with giving. What have you created? Who have you served? What are the moments and things and elements of that visualization that bring you joy and make you feel satisfied? Right, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And I just want you to hold those things in the back of your mind. Just remember the things that you instinctively feel you will have wanted to do with your life. So we're going to have a little chat about value systems. Now, by our values, I'm talking about the things and the qualities and the strengths that you hold in really high esteem, that you admire in other people, that you admire in yourself, you're proud of in yourself, or perhaps things that you aspire to, things that really matter to you and you would like to be or do more of. So that's what I mean by a value. And we'll have a look at some examples in a minute, in case anybody's not clear on them. So just having a quick think about where our values come from. Charlotte, I don't know if you fancy unmuting yourself and contributing to this. I'll give you a moment in case you would like that.
I'm here again.
Hi. um, where do you think we've kind of spoken a little bit about your upbringing already, and I just wondered, slightly differently from what we view success as, where do you think your values or our values come from? Where have they come from for you?
Definitely family. Yeah, definitely. I think especially my grandmother, honesty is the best policy. So that's a that's a high value of hers. Honesty is definitely a big thing. So yeah, I would definitely sort of stem and has all sort of steer in her direction when it comes to sort of strong values, good values as well.
That's really interesting. So your grandmother was an influential person in your life, in your upbringing.
100%, yeah.
So I think I agree. I mean, for me, I think, and I think for almost everybody, our upbringing inevitably is such an important part of kind of shaping who we are and what matters to us. But it's also worth being aware of the fact that it very often can shape what we think should matter to us. And it's really different for everyone. I think you sound like you had a really kind of positive and supportive upbringing. And I wonder, out of interest, if there's anything that you are aware that you inherited in terms of a value, which is something that you either have or maybe should let go of in your adult life, kind of forming your own identity and kind of giving yourself permission to go, that really mattered to them, and but it was a different time and they're different people, and actually this thing I kind of want to do differently. I don't want to put you on the spot, so don't worry if you can't think of anything now.
Can't think anything off the top of my head right now. If that's something we come back to, I might think of something.
Yes, of course. Yeah, no, please, let's come back to it. And to be honest, the most important thing is just having that in your mind, just the
Mm.
possibility that even in a really healthy, loving, supportive upbringing and current environment, I think it's quite easy to lose sight of the fact that we inherit our values. You know, we inherit them from our family. Sometimes, you know, people with a very strong faith, for example, get, you know, really inherit values from that and they play out very strongly in their lives. And it can be a really useful exercise, and it's kind of an ongoing life thing, exercise, rather than just a one-off thing. Just kind of having a think about them in a little bit more of an aware way and just saying to yourself, you know, I wonder if that's something I really believe, or if I just think it's important because everybody's always told me it's important. And I think an important part of maturing and going through life and kind of our journey, hate the word journey, but our journey through life is kind of giving ourselves permission to value the things that we value. And that might come from experience. It might come from letting go of some things that didn't work for us in the earlier parts of our life, or sometimes that we actually saw not working for people we care about. So, you know, for example, maybe you had a parent who really valued serving everybody around them. That was kind of their thing, you know, and that can give people immense pleasure and joy and genuine satisfaction. And for some people, it drains them and they value it too highly. They probably inherited it themselves. And these are the kinds of values that we can inherit sometimes. And I often find, certainly with myself and very often with clients, that we are sometimes unaware of how inherent they are. They're in our bones, these values, and they can be quite hard to let go of. And the most important thing we can do in order to let go of them is to just kind of take a breath and take a beat and go and actually just give yourself permission to let go of it. You know, that mattered to them, and I was always taught it was the thing that matters most, but maybe that's not how I want to live my life. Maybe something else is more important. So I think the important thing here is just really thinking about, you know, do you have ownership over your values? Are they your values, or are they just inherited values that perhaps you've outgrown, or perhaps some changes have happened in your life that means that those values actually can be different? I don't know how this screen share looks or how this presentation looks for everybody else, but I hope you can read these words, even though they're very small. This is by no means a finite list of values. I mean, there are literally probably infinite value terms that we can use. But what I'd like you to do, everybody, is just take a moment. I'm not going to give you too long to do this because actually this is something we can really get into overthinking and very quickly, subconsciously getting into thinking about what we probably ought to prioritise and ought to value. And I really, really urge you for this exercise. It is a private exercise. Nobody needs to know what you decide. But I'd like you to just look at these terms just for inspiration, or please, by all means, write your own. And again, I'm going to show you how to do this exercise now, but this is really a question of building awareness and something to take away with you and really just be thinking about over the coming weeks. So just have a look at this list. And the first thing I want you to do is to choose 10. Just scribble them down. So I'm just going to give you a moment to do that. Just choose 10 of these, the things that really jump out at you, and be completely honest and instinctive with yourself. What are the things that just hit you in the stomach in a good way? Just what does your instinct just go, yes, that's really cool, that's what I want, that's who I am, it's what I want to be surrounded by. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is to choose three from that list of 10, the 3 things that you value most in this list. You can make other lists at other times, but this list. So just have a think about 3 that really jump out at you. If you had to pick 3, what do they mean to you? Also, just being aware again of where these values have come from. Did you inherit them? Are they really yours? And to be clear, you can inherit them and yours, but those two can also be different things. So what I want you to do is to write down your 3 most important values, whether it's from that list or whether you go away and think about it this evening, or go for a walk and have a think about it, or just gradually build that awareness in the coming weeks. What in your current life are the 3 things that are most important to you? And then get a big marker and write them down. Write them down on a post-it note, on a bit of paper, and stick them somewhere that you look every day, whether that's as kind of a bookmark to your diary, whether it's just a post-it note on your computer, or whether it's on the wall. What are the 3 things that really matter? And I just want you to think of these things as your building blocks. So when you're making decisions, I'm not talking about what you have for lunch or something irrelevant, when you're making any significant decisions, and those things can be as small as just, what am I going to do today? How am I going to arrange my working day? What are my priorities going to be? Of course, sometimes we're forced to do things, and that's fine. That's not really making a decision. If we're making a decision for ourselves, just sense check those decisions against your values. And every day, or maybe it's every evening, some people journal, some people write gratitude journals, or just write down what's happened that day. All of us tend to have a sense at the end of the day of kind of how it's gone, broadly speaking. And a really nice thing to get into the habit of doing, whether it's in the bath or just in your bed kind of before you go to sleep, is just having a think about those values. Is life at the moment, whether it's that day or that week or whatever, is it adhering to those values? Are you living your life by those values? And a really important thing to remember is that it's completely normal, and in fact it's entirely appropriate for your priorities and your values to shift. So Charlotte, you spoke earlier about kind of learnt experience and how that's informed things for you, and that's important. So learned experience can play a part, but we go through so many chapter changes in our life, whether that's having a family or being in a different relationship, or the big shifts from education into independent life, again into retirement. Sometimes you just feel an internal shift. Sometimes I work with clients who just can't put a finger on it. They just know that things aren't right. They're not feeling satisfied by life. They're just not feeling like things are going the way they want them to be going. And these moments are really good moments to sit and think about your values and think about what really matters most to you, and whether you're really living your life according to those values. So, just a really quick tip on the subject of decision making. So, we've talked about how we can use our values and being really aware and honest with ourselves about our values in decision making. So, a lot of that is around kind of instincts. It's really important when we're assessing our value. Is this really speaking to our gut, or are we thinking with our head? Because when we're thinking with our head, we're thinking too much about learned and informed values. When we think with our gut, we are just having an instinctive thought about, or not, it's a realization really more than a thought about who we are and what matters to us. So we use the term, your gut feeling or whatever, really quite casually. But I think it's so much more powerful than people sometimes give it credit for. Another really good tip I like to use for decision making, particularly big, gnarly decisions that are really working at you and you just cannot figure it out, whether it's something kind of seemingly frivolous that you just can't work through, or whether it's something really important like a career decision or whether to stay in a relationship or not. I would ask you this. Get a coin, flip it, and choose. If it's heads, you make one decision, and if it's tails, you make another. And I'm just going to say, just do it. The next time you have one of those big decisions, just do it. Do it now if you've got a coin and you can think of something that you've been working over. And just flipping that coin and committing to heads or tails will teach you immediately in almost every instance what your gut is saying. So just a little decision-making tip that I hope will be helpful. It's 1:15, so we've got 15 minutes. I just want to have a look at setting goals. So, Charlotte, I don't know if you've ever worked with a life coach before, and I'm conscious that I'm speaking to other people who might be listening to this recording. The main job of a life coach, and life coaching, just like therapy or any of the other talking therapies, is a very broad term, and there are lots of specialisms within it, lots of different techniques and approaches. But very broadly, the definition of coaching is to help people set and achieve goals and helping people to sort of get clarity in their lives. And there are all sorts of other things that coaching can tackle, like building confidence, breaking down behavioural patterns, noticing behavioural patterns, looking at value systems and really exploring those really thoroughly. Lots of things, but I just want to boil it down today whilst we're thinking about success and taking a step towards doing something that might make us feel like we are living the successful life that we would like to live. So today I'm just going to teach you a really quick and simple technique, which is setting SMART goals. So as you can see, these different steps spell out SMART. It's really easy to remember. And I actually think if you do this a few times, even just having done that and having that awareness of it really shapes the way that you set and kind of make goals, create goals. So it doesn't need to be with pen and paper every time. But if you do it in a really systematic way, the first couple of times, it just kind of teaches your mind how to make a goal that's realistic and kind of help you to achieve that goal. So the first thing I would say, just kind of as an important aside, is a thing that can make our goals feel a lot more achievable is to break them down. So very often you'll get people who are wrestling with these huge goals like, I just need a different career, or I need to earn loads more money, or my life is a complete mess, I need to achieve balance. And they're all really good goals. They're really good, important goals. But we're wrestling with those goals because they're too big. They're too big. We can't tackle that in a day. So it ends up just kind of being abandoned, and very often that makes people feel overwhelmed and this really great sense of failure, like they're just not able to achieve what they want to achieve. So I think the first step is just being able to break down those goals into much, much smaller ones. Little things that adhere to our value system and therefore feel like really meaningful, important, relevant goals, and break them down and then really look at that goal within this SMART context. So I'm going to give you an example of a goal, and this is something that in real life, that I've been doing recently, and it's just an example, but it really could look like, and it could be in any area of your life. It could be big, it could be small. That's totally fine. So the big overriding goal that I started out with and was really wrestling with for a while is I I felt there was something. I love my work, I really love it, but I felt like there was something missing. There was some depth that I wasn't able to achieve. There was some earning power that I just hadn't really got there. And I was living with this sense of failure in my inability not to kind of identify what that thing is. That's a whole separate conversation for another workshop. But in the end, and after really quite some time, and I work in this space, so I know it can be really difficult, because even people who kind of teach this and work with clients can find it hard. For me, in the end, I realised that what I really wanted to do was to achieve my lifetime dream of becoming a psychotherapist. Using this SMART goal, the first thing it needs to be is specific. As I said, it can't just be a big, vague change. It needs to be something specific. So in my instance, my goal was I want to train and qualify as a psychotherapist. So is it measurable? Yes, it's measurable. In order to become a psychotherapist, I need to do a huge number of things. They're all very clear. There are some bodies you need to accredit, you need accreditation from, and you need to have achieved a whole set of some training, the relevant number of hours, and so on. So it's highly measurable, and I will know once I've achieved it. So a question I sometimes ask my clients is, how will you know once what will it look like to have achieved that? Is the goal attainable? Honestly, it feels like a real challenge, and that's okay. It's fine for it to be challenging, but it needs to be possible. So until this point in my life, it has been impossible for various reasons. Having a family, finances, and so on, it has just been impossible. And it's still going to be really challenging in terms of carving out the time, carving out the finances. But for whatever reason, I just have a gut feeling that at the moment it's attainable. We'll figure it out. I'm in a headspace where my children are a little bit more grown up. Then is it relevant? Are we just randomly reaching for things and just finding goals? That is, it can hold its own satisfaction, but it's not really working towards a successful and meaningful life. So in my case, for this example, yes, it's really relevant. I've worked in this space now for a decade. I work with therapists all the time. I really admire their work and I admire them, and I would really like to be able to work with clients on that kind of deeper level. So it's really relevant to my goals. I'd also like to be able to, have a bit more earning power, and it's relevant to that too. So finally, the goal needs to be timely. So you need to actually have a deadline, otherwise they can just go on forever. So does it have a deadline? Yes, it does. I've had to make some commitments. So I'll be starting training in September. I know how long the training is going to take. I give myself permission to, if something happens in life, to take a break from it if needs be, but it does have a very clear time structure. So that is how to set a SMART goal. And I think a really helpful thing could be for some of you to just pick something. Maybe you've got a big goal in mind, or maybe you just need to practice and just use a small one and just do this exercise and see if it helps you just to get into the habit of making meaningful, clear goals and actually achieve them. So Charlotte, I just wonder, you had such a lovely definition of success, I feel, and I feel you got such a clear sense of the fact that different people have different definitions, and success really means different things to everybody. So this isn't a trick question, and it's not a like, ta-da, your definition needs to have changed. But I do know that I know from my coaching experience that some people who listen to this will, I really hope, have slightly revisited and reevaluated what success might look like for them. I know that for myself, I have really wrestled in my life with kind of the idea that I was raised with in a very happy, healthy family environment, that kind of, earning really well and kind of career status and so on was really important. And I've had to be really, really deliberate and thoughtful and constantly, it is a constant piece of work, just reminding myself that there are really lots of things I really care about. I really care about being a present mother. I really care about my friendships. I really care about modeling things I think are important in life to my children. I really care about my work. I want to be contributing to the world and giving back. So I'm just giving you some ideas, but these are things I have to remind myself of the whole time. And they really help me to feel a greater sense of success than I feel letting myself go down that kind of negative thought process. Charlotte, I can hear slightly that you've unmuted yourself. I wonder if you had anything to contribute.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you were just saying. I think for me, the older I'm getting, it's definitely been a lot more present, sort of amongst family and friends. I think, especially sort of in my 20s, I was really career focused. And so looking back, I probably did put a lot of relationships on the back burner. Whereas now, sort of being nearly 40, so I'm getting blown away by the wind.
That's all right. Nice. You need.
If you can hear it. But now, especially sort of, yeah, coming up to 40, it's definitely priorities have shifted. Um, yeah, and definitely sort of getting those relationships sort of back on track on how they should be, really. It didn't help that I moved quite far away, so that's going to make things a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely, God. I mean, that's such a good example of a big change. I mean, you've actually presented me with two really great examples of when, when we might really look at those values and kind of think about the things that matter at the moment. And one of them is approaching 40, which I actually think is a really interesting milestone I have discovered. In terms of kind of thinking about, what do I want for this next decade? What do I want for myself? And the other thing you've told me about is moving. And that can really, sometimes we need like a temporary set of values. Like at the moment, these are the important things. Like I really want to establish myself here. I really want to make some connections and build up some relationships with, with local people. I want to kind of explore and make this my home. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out there, but value systems can be eternally flexible and that they're for you. They are to use as you want them to. The important thing is just that awareness, and also the consciously choosing what's important rather than just assuming things or just letting ourselves be swept away by what we think should be important. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. So I really hope that's been helpful in some way. It's just such a huge topic and it really was a very boiled down version. I'm really conscious, Charlotte, for you that perhaps are thinking about kind of getting that confidence together to kind of get out there and make new clients. I really hope that some of the things we've talked about are going to be useful for you. In kind of really getting back to that sense of your identity and who you are. And actually that can be a really important thing when we're trying to get our confidence and our sort of sense of clarity together. But there's also lots more work that can be done, Charlotte, in order to take those steps. And for anybody out there who's listening to this, who's hoping to kind of build out and expand their life into a track that kind of feels more aligned to their version of success, there are lots of ways you can do that. And I really hope these links do link. And I'm going to ask lovely Anna if she could distribute this afterwards. But if anybody's interested in doing some life coaching or indeed some group workshops, if you want to get friends together and do something like this, but a little bit more personalised, kind of more specific, coming to me with some specific goals, then you can see my website. I coach. That's something I can do and love to do. So that's one way that you can kind of make some really good progress. And I've put my wellbeing concierge service in because loads of people seem to need it, so it's just a sort of more of a by the way. We do this. What we do is we help. We've got a really good black book of independent practitioners, from coaches to therapists to nutritional therapists to family lawyers and anything turbulent that's happening in your life. that you need support with, we help you to kind of understand what that is and hook you up with some good support. But finally, I just want to let everybody know that I work for this really nice charity. It's called Wilfred's House. It's about 10 years old, and it's small and lovely and really well run, really responsibly run. Historically, it's a therapy charity, but a couple of years ago, I set up a life coaching service. So if anybody would like access to life coaching or to psychotherapy, we offer really good one-to-one support. For most people, it's just a low-cost fee of £35 a session. That just pays for the running costs. Anybody on universal credit, or if randomly you're a member of one of our partner organisations, then that might be fully funded. But please do go and have a look, or send it to anybody who you think might need some support and would struggle to pay for full cost coaching or therapy. Right, well, it's 2 minutes to 1:30, so I think we'll wrap this up. But Charlotte, thank you so much for giving up your sunny lunchtime and being part of this, and for being so lovely about sharing your personal views on this. I do hope that this has gone some way to kind of helping you think about your next steps. And thank you to anybody else who's listening. I really hope that something in here has spoken to you. Please do reach out if you'd like any kind of support, or if you've got any questions. And now I just need to work out, I'm going to stop sharing. I need to work out how to actually end the workshop. But yeah, have a lovely day, week in the sunshine. Looks like this is going to go on. And yeah, thanks very much to Anna, who's doing an amazing job supporting this community. And I've met some really great assistants through Pally Talk. So very good to virtually meet you. Bye-bye.